All right. Now I'm starting the webinar. I'll give it until 2 until everyone can join, which should be in a little bit. Give it some time. I believe we're at 2 o'clock East Coast time.
Yes,
So
1 o'clock my time.
good. Yeah, me too. So we'll just start then. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this professional learning opportunity today. I am Angela Lazar, Digital Project Coordinator from NCEA, and I will be facilitating this webinar today. So just a few housekeeping notes as everyone is joining in. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to use the Q&A window. And you can do that by hovering your mouse over the screen and you'll see a Q&A box on the bottom of your screen. I will share a link to the online survey and how to receive a certificate of completion for the webinar at the end. So for today's webinar, From Clicks to Consequences, addressing the silent epidemic of cyberbullying, you'll learn more about how cyberbullying happens and how to address it. And we have Christina Jontra, Neptune Navigate Chief Navigator, who will also go into its impact and share some important statistics on it. And you'll learn about its effects on mental health and the different roles that are played in cyberbullying. So if you can please go ahead and introduce yourself, Christina.
Thanks, Angela. I'm Christina Jontra, and I'm the creator and chief navigator of a product we call Neptune Navigate. Started it 5 years ago. It's an online, self-paced curriculum that teaches students, staff, and parents how to be smart and safe online. So that's what brings me here. And we're a proud partner with NCEA.
Thank you very much. Well, before I turn it over to you, Christina, I just want to start off in prayer. So let us begin in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Father, you are our rock, fortress, and Savior. You are our rock in whom we find protection. Lord, you always keep your promises. You are gracious in all that you do. You help those who have fallen and you lift those who have too much to carry. People everywhere look to you in hope and you give them their food as they need it. When you open your hand, you satisfy the hunger and thirst of every living thing. Thank you for being a refuge of safety for those who are hurt by others. Thank you for being our Savior and the one who saves us from violence and bullying. Thank you for never leaving or abandoning your people. Amen. In the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Thank you very much, Christina. I'll hand it off to you now.
All right. So as we start, we're talking about cyberbullying. And I want to give a framework for us to start with, because I think it is so helpful. And the first one is out of Matthew. Look, the golden rule is still such a vital way for us to live out our lives among people. And so just these gentle words of in everything, do to others as you would have them do to you, for this sums up the law and the prophets. And so we're going to base what we talk about today on that, but also on this. I love the story of the Good Samaritan. And just as a fast review, if it's been a while since you've thought about it, it's out of Luke 10. And Jesus is asked a question, and his answer, the end of his answer is, love your neighbor as yourself. And the person that he's speaking with says, well, who is my neighbor? And it's a question we can ask today, and we'll talk more about it in a minute. But as the parable progresses, Jesus explains this story where a man is robbed and hurt on the side of the road. And 3 people come by, first a priest and then a Levite. And both the priest and the Levite ignore the man hurting on the side of the road and walk past him. And then a Samaritan comes by and stops and gives aid and takes care of the hurting man. And at the end of that story, Jesus says, which of these 3 do you think was the neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? And the person he was talking with answered, the one who showed him mercy. And this is the verse that I love the most, because it's so simple. Jesus's response was, go and do likewise. And so as we think about the lives that we lead online and the lives that our students are leading online, that's how we should act. That's how we should treat people. Because if you ask us today in 2023, who's my neighbor? Man, that is an even larger audience. Because like, I know my neighbors on my street. I know their names. I know their stories. We actually, on my street, we've been grieving as a neighborhood because 2 of our neighbors last month passed away unexpectedly. And so I'm clear on, in the real world, in real life, in the face-to-face, who my neighbors are. But I spend a lot of time, like many of you, spend a lot of time living my life online. And so that idea of who's my neighbor, it got much bigger when I got online. And it does the same for our students. And so let's get into it. The first thing I want to ask you is,
Christina,
yeah.
are you sharing your screen?
You know what? Angela, you're so good.
I didn't want to cut you off.
Oh, no, you needed to. There we
Thank
go.
We appreciate it. Thank you so much.
My apologies. Thank
No
you.
worries. Thank you.
So the question we're going to ask at the very beginning is, all this technology, what kind of a tool is it? Because I don't think we can expect our students to intuitively know how to use all these digital tools appropriately, ethically, and responsibly. And so I have this picture of the hammer and the bat. And the hammer, look, a hammer is a great tool. I can build things with it. I can clean things out. I can do good work with it. I mean, it reminds me of, we have a really vibrant Habitat for Humanity here in the community where I live. And there you can see the good work of the tool, a hammer, in building homes for those who need it. And look, Angela, don't be upset with me, but I added the bat because it's a World Series and my Texas Rangers are 2 games ahead of Arizona Diamondbacks. So the baseball bat, it's a good tool. I mean, it hit some home runs in the game last night, but it can also be used to do great destruction and hurt people. And the same is true with all of this technology that we literally walk around with every day in our pockets. And so in that context of go and do likewise, go and show mercy to your neighbors, I want to talk about a problem that I don't think we talk about enough. And so maybe this in your own community will get you thinking and talking about with your teacher friends, with your coworkers, how you see this playing out in your school context. So the first thing I want to do before we go any farther is just give a good working definition of cyberbullying. And this is the definition that we use in our curriculum because I think it's succinct. And I think it's easy to understand. So for us, the definition is cyberbullying happens when someone purposefully and repeatedly uses some form of technology to harass, intimidate, or threaten another person. And as you can see, the two most important words in this definition are purposefully. So someone sets out with intent to cause someone else harm. And it happens repeatedly. Now, the legal definition of repeatedly, I don't know what that is. I can give you a good example. Recently, actually, it was about 3 years ago, a good friend of mine here in my community was called to jury duty, and she was sitting on a trial, an online harassment trial. Texas has an online harassment law, and a gentleman was on trial for harassing a coworker online, and he was convicted, by the way. But the evidence was the repeatedly was 3. He had sent 3 emails to a coworker which were threatening and intimidating. And so that definition of repeatedly, what I like to say is just remember, it's not a one-off. It's not just a one-time being rude. It's not just a one-time being inconsiderate. It is repeatedly. And I think I told Angela at the beginning, I've had a cough for the last few days. It's the change of weather. And so sorry, I'm going to have to get a drink every once in a while. But I hope that definition works for you. And what I would hope that you would do with it is talk about it with your students and talk about it with your parents, because that's a part of this that I think we're missing, is parents understanding what rises to the level of cyberbullying. So the question that comes to my mind is, why does cyberbullying pose such a huge problem? Because bullying's not new. I mean, there were bullies on the playground when I was in elementary school in the 70s. It's been going on as long as humans have walked the planet. Look, Cain and Abel. Cain probably bullied his brother Abel years before he killed him. So bullying is nothing new. But what I'd like to propose to you is this. Cyberbullying, it's different. It's different for a number of reasons. And let me just list them out for you. First, 8 hours and 39 minutes. Common Sense Media, the year after the pandemic, that year when we were all back in school face to face, they did a survey where they wanted to see if screen time had increased, because we knew it did. We had spent all of those months during the pandemic doing school online. We had sent our students online for all that time. And one of the unintended consequences was screen time increased. But once we went back to school, their question, what they wanted to see was how much. And what they found was it had increased 17%. And what that looked like was, on average, students from 12 to 17 were spending on average 8 hours and 39 minutes per day online on some type of screen. It's a lot of time. When you take the 8 hours and 39 minutes and school, there's not a lot of time left in the day. Another thing that makes cyberbullying different, 144 times. That is the average number of times we pick up our phone to check it. Not that we've necessarily received a notification, but you know how we do. If it doesn't catch our attention, if it doesn't notify us, how many times do you just randomly pick it up to look at it? The survey, the most recent one that I could find, said on average, we pick up our phones at least 144 times. I don't know if you saw last month, the Today Show that did a story on a survey that was done where an app was put on. They took 200 high school students and they put an app on their phones that would count the number of notifications they received in a day. 230, over 230 was the average number of notifications students were receiving during the day. And that's a lot. But what was even more shocking in that survey, there was a large number of those 200 kids who were receiving 4,000 notifications in a single day. I mean, imagine the disruption. And then our last one is this. 52% of high school students report using the internet almost constantly each day. And I think those other numbers would bear that out. Our kids are online constantly. And because of that, cyberbullying is happening at record numbers. And so the question is the difference. Why do I propose that cyberbullying can in many instances be worse, harder to deal with, harder to manage than a bully in real life? And I'll give you 3 reasons. One, because online, the cyberbully has an unlimited audience. I mean, it's just, it is unlimited. I mean, if they're on any kind of social media platform, if it's happening on Instagram, I mean, there are millions and millions of people every day on Instagram. And so it's for the in real life bully, the audience is just who happens to be there at the time. And that's a smaller audience. Second reason, because online, everything is permanent thanks to screenshots. And so whatever way the cyberbullying is happening, if it's name calling, if it's threatening, if it's pictures that are embarrassing, those are permanent because you can take a screenshot and share them. So if the bullying is first taking place, let's say on Instagram, people can take screenshots of those embarrassing or mean posts and then share them through text, can share them on other platforms. They just have this permanence that in real life bullying doesn't have. Also, I will say that real life bullying, and the reason bullying is different today than it was, say, in the 70s and 80s, before we had social media, is that if I were getting bullied at school, when the bell rang at the end of the day, I'd come home and the bullying experience stayed at school. I could come home and shut the front door and be at home and be away from all of it. Our kids don't get that now because they carry it with them on their phones from school to home, and it doesn't shut down. It doesn't end with that last bell of the school day. It continues 24/7. And so the last reason is it has a longer shelf life. Probably even after it has been dealt with, because of the permanence, because of the unlimited audience, it has a longer shelf life. And that's what makes it a more detrimental to the person who's being bullied. And so from that, we like to teach students and teachers and parents that online there are two things that are true. And these two things, as I've just explained, make cyberbullying even worse. And that is, the first rule is online, everything is permanent. Because a screenshot, everything is permanent. And you can, so that's why we try to teach students to think and consider the ramifications of the pictures they post. Because once you post something, a picture or a video, you lose control of it, because it can be downloaded, it can be a screenshot taken of it, and you lose all control of it. And so everything online is permanent, and nothing is ever really private. Excuse me. And you'll see that in the example that I'm about to give you. But first, let's look at some of the statistics regarding cyberbullying. First one is 95%. This is Pew Research's most recent data. 95% of teenagers have access to smartphones. I mean, I keep wondering how close we're going to get to 100%. There is a large Amish community, so I guess we'll never reach 100%. But 95% of teenagers in America, at least, have access to smartphones. And here's the number that just keeps growing. 46%, and this is Pew Research again, 46% of teenagers report having been the target of cyberbullying at some time. And we'll go at the end today, we'll go over the different roles involved in cyberbullying, but there's one of them, the target, the one who is being bullied, 46%. So when you look at your class today or tomorrow, just know that almost half of them have probably at one time or another been the target of a cyberbully. And this is, without a doubt, the statistic that bothers me the most, and the reason why I wanted to do this webinar with you, is that according to the National Crime Prevention Council, of the kids that they surveyed who had been the target of a cyberbully, only 11% had talked to a trusted adult, had reached out for help from a trusted adult. And that should give us all pause. That should give us all the motivation to talk to our students, to our own children about their experience online. Because if they're not talking about it, they are suffering in silence. And I don't even have to have good Google search skills to find you 10 news stories from this year of kids who have ended their lives because they were being bullied online and because they were suffering in silence and were felt so alone. So let that statistic move you, but also let me give you hope. So in 2017, I think, I saw on Edutopia posted a video on their Facebook page. And I'll give you the link at the end. I'll put it in the chat, or you can email me and ask me for it. But they did, Edutopia did kind of a documentary little video on a school who had made a commitment to make sure every student is known. And what they did was they they brought the whole, it was an elementary school, and around the room, they had lists of every student with every student's name on it. And on like big post-it notes, huge post-it notes that you can put up poster size. And down the left-hand column was the name of every student at their school. And then there were 3 categories. And you see them here. It's name and face, it's academic status, and personal story. And so what teachers were asked to do was go and put stickers. If do you know the name and face of this student? Could you pick them up in the lineup? And so they put their post-it notes. And then do you know what their academic status is? How well are they doing in school? Do they struggle? Are they at reading level? Do they struggle in math? What is do you know about their academic status? And then the last one was, do you know a personal story about that student? And when they finished, they looked at it and took in all the data. And the purpose was to find the kids who didn't have a teacher who knew their name and face, and who didn't know their academic status, and who didn't know their personal story. And thankfully, there weren't a whole lot, but there were some. And so the commitment of this school, of this faculty, was, we're going to assign a teacher to that student who we don't know well enough, who isn't known in our school. And we're going to make sure that every student in our school is known. So there's my challenge for you. If you want just to make sure that every student in your school is known, and it goes beyond just a name and a face. That's a great start. But do you know something? Are they really known? And that is first step in addressing that 11%. Because if a student is really known, then the adults around them are going to notice, I hope, are going to notice if something changes, and they need to check in with that student. So that if that student becomes one of the 46%, they have a trusted adult that they know is in their corner and who will help walk them through a situation like cyberbullying. So what is cyberbullying? What does it look like? Sorry. The most common types of cyberbullying are name calling. And remember our definition: purposeful and repeated. Purposeful and repeated. So it's repeatedly calling names. It's spreading false rumors. It's receiving explicit images that were not asked for, and threats of physical danger. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for. Now, in my community, we have 2 public high schools, and we have 4 private high schools. And each one of those, so 4 private, 2 public, in all 6 of those schools have something in common. And as I travel around the country and talk to teachers and students, I'm finding that this is common in community after community. So it's probably happening in the community where you live. But that one thing that we all 6 have in common is for each school, there is either on Twitter, which I know is now called X, but I refuse, either on Twitter or on Instagram, there is a anonymous site for that school that is often run by a senior, and it's handed down from one senior to the next class at the end of the school year. And the purpose of which students are encouraged to send anonymous stories or posts about things in the school. And here's what it turns into. It turns into a page making fun of people, catching people in compromising positions. I read an article recently. I thinking it was the New York Times. It might not have been, but it was a national news article about these anonymous Instagram pages. And this particular school, students were afraid to go to the restroom while at school because people would take pictures of their feet in a stall and post that to the anonymous page as though that were an embarrassing thing, going to the restroom during the day. I was speaking at a conference of student athletes up in Indianapolis a couple of years ago, and I was talking about this with these student athletes. And as I was talking, one of the kids in the audience who had been engaged in what I was talking about suddenly was on his phone, and he was scrolling through his phone, and I thought I'd lost his attention, and in a little bit he raised his phone up to hand it to me, and I was like, what, why are you giving me your phone? And he said, just look at it. And it was a picture from the anonymous Instagram page from his school, and it was a picture of him. He had fallen asleep in chemistry class, and his head was propped like this, and you could see drool coming out of his mouth, and the purpose of which was to embarrass him. And so I tell you that so that you're aware of it. When I was still working at school, I was aware and kept an eye on the anonymous. It was at our school. It was an anonymous Twitter page. And one day I opened it up to find a post that was making fun of one of our students. And this was a student, man, he was a lovely kid, but he wasn't like everybody else. This school was a majority white school, and he was African American, and he was tiny for his age, and I was enraged that someone would make fun of this kid. And so I set out to find out who it was. And in doing that, I went and looked at who followed that account. And what I found was there was a large university, private university here in Texas, that was following our anonymous Twitter account. And it was specifically the admissions department from this large private university, a university where we sent any year probably 10 to 15 of our students. And so I reached out to our parents and explained the situation. And I said, I want you to find out who owns this site, because I want this taken down. And it took about a day and a half until someone finally let me know who owned that account, and we were able to take care of it and learn some hard lessons because of it. And thankfully, it was pretty easy to take care of. But let me share with you this story. This is from the New Yorker magazine. This is a story about a high school in Albany, California. It's a small community near San Francisco. And in 2017, an Instagram account was started by two high school boys. One of them, this school was predominantly white, but the news reports describe it as diverse. However, so it was majority white. It had a large Korean population, and the makeup of the Black and brown students was what I've read about 3%. So this Instagram page was started by 2 high school students, and it was private. It was a private group. Now you remember, let's go back. Remember the 2 things I said were true on the internet. Everything is permanent and nothing is ever really private. So this Instagram account was full of memes and pictures and videos that joked about slavery, lynchings, and it mocked Black girls' natural hair. And it was created by 2 students, and it was followed. Remember, I said they made it private, and they only allowed 11 followers. So in this school, that the enrollment was, I think, just under 1,200 students. You have 11 people following the account, 2 people created it, and it disrupted this school in ways that they never imagined. There's a book that's been written about it called Accountable. It's called Accountable, the true story of the racist social media account and the teenagers whose lives it changed forever. I'll give a link to it. It's written by Dashka Slater, and it's a young adult book. But it's documenting. She wrote it on a high school level in hopes that high schools would read it. So I recommend it to you. I'm reading it right now. But here's what happened. That private Instagram account didn't stay private. Screenshots of it spread throughout the school, and it was devastating. It was devastating to the kids who had been made fun of on it, finding out that the classmates, the people they thought were their friends, were liking and commenting on jokes about slavery and lynching. It was so disruptive. The school took action. The school suspended the 11 who followed the account and suspended the 2 who had created it. They tried to do, they brought in a group to do a restorative justice group to try to give an opportunity for those who participated to apologize and explain. It did not go well. And as a result, remember, this happened in 2017. The last court case was just finished just a few months ago. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court didn't take the case, but there were several lawsuits filed by many of those involved, and it went from 2017 to 2023. And the New York Magazine article gives 2 quotes that I want to show you of the impact this had. It derailed lives, shredded relationships, and caused families to flee both the town and its public schools. And then this quote: "What happened in Albany happened online, but the repercussions played out everywhere. People gathered in homes, in classrooms, in supermarkets, and on sport fields, on Facebook and next door." That's the impact that cyberbullying can have on a school, on a community. That's why we have to take it seriously. That's why I encourage you, if you're not aware that your school has one of these anonymous accounts, look for it. look at it. I'm not saying that you become the social media police, but I am saying that if only 11% talk to a trusted adult when they are faced with something like this, we need to do better. Our kids deserve better, because it's having terrible impact on their mental health. Kids who are the target of a cyberbullying, they are twice as likely to attempt suicide than their peers. They're more likely to use drugs and alcohol and to carry a weapon to school. And 8 times, the statistics are, they're 8 times more likely to carry a weapon to school. We have to be aware. We have to be looking out for our students, because the impact that it has on their mental health, and the biggest one to me is this isolation and loneliness, because they feel like they're the only ones. They feel like they've done something wrong. They haven't. They feel like this is their burden to bear that they can't get away from. And so they need us. They need us to be aware. Hold on. The CDC came out earlier this year with their youth behavioral survey that they do every 10 years, and it's not good. It's not good. In the last 10 years, girls in particular have 57% report a persistent sadness. 57% of girls, and it was a 60% increase. Look, all this time that they're spending online is not serving them well. It is doing too often irreparable damage. 30% seriously considered suicide. And we see that with cyberbullying because of the isolation and because how constant it is, that these numbers, while sad, are not surprising. So let's look at the roles that are involved. And we've already talked about some of these. And the first one is just the cyberbully. Often, this is the kid who's been bullied. And this is, we've heard the phrase, and it's true, hurt people hurt people. And so because of the anonymity of being online, sometimes that emboldens them. They feel the power that they didn't feel when they were being bullied. So that's one of the motivations. It doesn't excuse what they do, but it does sometimes explain where it comes from. Next is the target. I don't like to call it the victim. Victim seems like you don't have any power, but target seems to be a better descriptor. This is the person who's being bullied. This is the one who feels alone. This is the one who can't get away from it because their life is lived so much on a screen. And then what about the people who are watching? The first one is the bystander. This is the one who watches, but does nothing, just watches, and maybe feels bad, and maybe doesn't do something, doesn't say something, because they're afraid that it will make them the target. But we've got to embolden our kids. Remember, if we go back to the very beginning of this discussion, if we are to love our neighbor as ourselves, and if we look back at the Good Samaritan, that phrase that Jesus said, go and do likewise, go and show mercy. Mercy is standing up to a bully. Mercy is showing the target that they're not alone. And that is the upstander. That's the one who maybe goes to a trusted adult and says, hey, look at what's happening online. This has to stop. This isn't good. And so that's what we encourage our students to do, to go and do likewise, go and give mercy. Now, what we try to teach students is, what do you do if 46% have experienced cyberbullying at some time in their life? They need to know what to do when it happens. Not if it happens, sadly, but when it happens. And the first thing we tell them to do is to stop. Just stop. Walk away from your devices. Don't engage. For the target, don't engage, because that will only throw fuel on the fire. But we also ask them to start taking power back. And the first thing they can do to gain power and control is take a screenshot of the bullying that's happening. And remember our definition. Cyberbullying happens when someone purposefully and repeatedly uses some form of technology to harass, imitate, or threaten another person. But you need to have the evidence. Can't tell you how many times I've tried to help kids address a cyberbully, but they couldn't show me the evidence. It makes it a lot harder. Not that you don't believe them, but it just helps if you can see what the bullying was. And then we ask them to do the one thing they don't want to do, which is block that person. Every social media site gives you this ability. Block them. Stop their access to you. And kids don't want to do that because they think, if someone's talking about me, even though it's mean and negative, and even though it causes me pain, I want to know what they're saying. And that's not healthy. It's not healthy at all. So we say, block that person. And then tell a trusted adult, don't suffer in silence. This is what you can tell your students on repeat, that you will be their trusted adult. If they ever face cyberbullying, that you will always defend them, and that you're a safe person. And then we tell them, share with your friends. Don't suffer in silence. Share with your friends. Take back control and share with your friends, because the isolation does no one any good. Now, what can students do to prevent it? What we beg students to do, and they don't want to. And that's a whole nother discussion, but make all of their social media accounts private rather than public. That limits the number of voices that can come at them. And that's a hard sell with teenagers, but it's wisdom. We tell students all the time, avoid oversharing. Everyone on the internet does not deserve to know all the details of your life. And if you see students oversharing, that's a cry for help. That means that they don't feel seen and heard. And so that is something I beg parents to be aware of. Lastly, choose wisely. Choose your friends wisely. Choose to only allow those into your online life that you would also allow in your real life. Those friends who will support you, those friends who are positive, those friends who will give mercy when mercy is required. And that's a hard one for students to grasp, because what's motivating them on social media are the numbers. They want the number of followers. They want the number to be high, because that to them is credibility. That is too often where value is found. One last thing before we go, just know every state in the country has laws on the books regarding cyberbullying. Everyone treats it differently, but everyone has laws. And so if you're not familiar with how your state handles them, these are two resources. So cyberbullying.org and stopbullying.gov. You can go and see how your state handles it. And it's different for each state. It is good to know that at least every state has taken it seriously and made it illegal. It's often considered online harassment, and that is handled differently by each state. I'm going to leave you with one quote, and then we'll see if there are any questions we need to answer. But I don't know if you follow Gary Brooks is very active on all the socials. He's a principal out of Kentucky. He speaks all over the country, and he's on a post recently, a video recently. He made this statement, and it has stuck with me. Leave footprints to follow, not scars to heal. That's how we live out that command to love our neighbors as ourselves, where we leave footprints to follow, not scars to heal. I hope this has been useful to you. I hope it's giving you something to talk about among your staff and with your students, because I think they need to know that we're aware and that we see it going on. I'll leave you with this. Here's how you can find us online. I'm going to stop sharing now, Angela, and get back. There we go. Facebook.
Hello.
Do you have any questions that we need to address? I'm going to put in the chat a link to that video. I will do that right now. There we go.
That's great.
That. So, do you have any questions that we need to consider before we go?
I don't see any open questions right now, but if they do have any questions, could they email you?
Yes, I'll put in my email address right now.
Yeah, that'd be great for them to just have an ability to reach out to you.
There's my email address. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a really, really excellent presentation with a lot of interesting insights. We really appreciate your time, Christina.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Of course. And everyone, thank you for attending today's NCEA webinar. NCEA continuously strives to improve the quality of our services for our members based on feedback. So you'll see a link that I inputted in the chat. You can use that to put your input and your opinions and thoughts on the webinar itself, and that will help inform our future work and improve our services overall. The survey should take no more than 5 minutes to complete. And if you are interested in the certificate of attendance, please include your email address and your name at the end of the survey. Since it will be sent to you via automated email, please check your spam. Sometimes it gets sent to spam. So if you don't see an email within a few minutes, just check there. And to learn more about any upcoming webinars, please visit ncea.org/webinar. And thank you so much again, Christina. It was excellent. We appreciate your time, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks.
Thank you. Well, take care. Have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.